I wanted to pick a movie where the music took a central role in the story, in some way, but I don't want to be too obvious and pick a musical since the music is supposed to advance the plot in a musical. Instead, I wanted to choose a movie where the music complements the story without overpowering the rest of the movie, if that makes sense. Like, if I decided to talk about The Wizard of Oz, it would be kind of boring, not just because everyone already talked about it in this class, but everybody would already know how the music advanced the plot since it's a musical, so of course the characters are going to develop through musical numbers. I want to talk about films where the music subtly shows the emotion of the players and the story through the musicianship and its pace in the story or scene is played, which is why I picked two films to discuss that I think have the music that says something about the characters without them needing to sing every 5 minutes. The film I picked are 1973's American Graffiti, directed by George Lucas, and 2010's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, directed by Edgar Wright. I picked these movies as I think the music in each film serves the production uniquely and interesting and helps elevate the experience beyond simply being just another forgettable Hollywood piece that won't be remembered in another 20 years. Now, for some context, the film American Graffiti is a story about a group of teenagers and their late-night misadventures, cruising the streets of Modesto, California. The group consists of Steve and Laurie, a young couple whose relationship is put to the test as Steve leaves for college the next day. Terry, a geeky kid who cruises around town trying to impress a girl he picked up on his way around the strip. Kurt, a drifter who has no direction in life and is contemplating whether or not he should leave like Steve or stay in his hometown. He sees a young blonde and falls hopelessly in love with her, spending most of the film trying and failing to find her again. Then there's John, a slightly older man who yearns for simpler times as he drives a 1932 Ford coupe, symbolizing his attachment to the past and general dislike for the new technology of the 60s. He's stuck watching over a young girl who, when her sister decides to drop her off with him, he's also challenged by a big drag shot racer named Bob Khalifa, played by Harrison Ford. All these stories interconnect at different points in the film, which helps paint a deeper picture of each character and flesh out the themes of the story. The soundtrack is made up of a select number of hits from the 50s and 60s that help set the scene of an early 60s Modesto, California, and also fits the themes of teenage angst, romance, disillusionment, and fear of the future as custom to anyone in their late teens and early 20s, but also captures the wonder and innocence of the love generation. The music is mostly played in the background to not overpower the scene or to distract from the dialogue. In cinematography, the instruments are mostly drums and electric guitars that are far from the traditional orchestra that you might find in other film productions, but it serves the film as it adds to its unique identity. As a 1960s throwback, another thing the music does well is set the tone of the story, as the songs are all lighthearted in tone that fits the aesthetic of the early 60s, but it also establishes the mood of each scene. That example that pops into my head at the moment is the scene where John is driving his car, cruising around the California strip with Carol, the young girl he accidentally picked up thinking she was much older, as when they are cruising, Surfing Safari by the Beach Boy plays. John turns it off, saying he doesn't like that surfer shit, as he puts it. Carol turns it back on and asks John if he doesn't think the Beach Boys are totally boss, to which John responds that rock and roll has been going downhill since Buddy Holly died, which establishes his character as someone who is stuck in the past and longs for the days of Elvis Presley and Little Richard, of the first generation of rock and roll. It also foreshadows events in the story, as at the end of the movie it is revealed that John Miller was killed by a drunk driver in December 1966 at the age of 22, which mirrors Buddy Holly, who died in a plane crash along with fellow musicians Richie Valens and J.P. Richardson on the day that is often called the day the music died, in reference to Don McLean's song American Pie, which came out a few years before the film. The death is also a direct reference to James Dean, who died in a car crash on September 30th, 1955. As you can see, the music serves not just as a set dressing for the aesthetic of the movie, but also enhances the themes of the movie. Another example is a scene at the school dance where the song that plays perfectly matches the mood of Laurie's laments the many ups and downs of her and Steve's relationship as they hold each other tight now. Another thing about this movie is that George Lucas has said that he wrote scenes in the movie to certain songs he wanted to film, and I think that shows in some ways, as some songs just blend perfectly into the background of any scene they appear. Now that I have talked about the music and how it interacts with the movie, I want to take a detour to talk about another one of my favorite films, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and see how the music interacts and supports the film. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details of the plot this time, as it is a very simple plot, boy meets girl story, but with action movie twist, as the film centers on the titular Scott Pilgrim as he must defeat 7 of the evil exes of the literal girl of his dream, Ramona Flowers. As you can see, the plot is a very simple and is set up almost like a video game, which the music adds to, with the opening Universal logo using a custom chiptune version of the iconic Universal fanfare we're all too familiar with. The film also includes music from the video games. As an example, there are 2 instances where the film uses samples from The Legend of Zelda. In the beginning, where the iconic song from Link to the Past plays as a scene transition, in a dream sequence with the Great Fairy Fountain theme from Ocarina of Time is played. Now, it's not just like video game music that serves the aesthetic of the film, as the soundtrack is also filled with garage band type music that fits perfectly with the angsty and hipster influenced world of the film's version of Toronto, Canada. The music also fits into the story, as Scott is a bassist in the band Sex Bob-omb, which performs many of the songs that appear in the film. The song also all have service in the plot, as some of the villains even have a few songs, and while the movie isn't what you would call a musical, it still has major character development tied to the musical numbers. For example, the song Black Sheep is about a breakup, and the lyrics perfectly fit the thematic meaning as they performed by Scott's ex, Envy Adams, played by Captain Marvel actor Brie Larson. The song captures the feeling one might have after going through a split up with a recent partner, and all the feelings of freedom but also regret that might come with it. It also shows how Scott's behavior ruins any good relationship he is in due to his mostly childish view of the world, and how he would rather ignore any of his flaws and past mistakes instead of growing as a person and changing to the better, which also mirrors his love interest Ramona, which is all covered more in the comics the film is based on. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the innate ramblings about film that I find particularly worth discussion, and I hope that I could explain a bit of what I think music can do to support the structure of the film-going experience.